I'm talking about a Wolverine book, for example, it's like if issue 7 is Wolverine versus Sabretooth, it cannot be Wolverine versus Sabretooth on issue 10. However, if it's Sabretooth and Omega Red, now we're talking.
Welcome back, man.
We did it. I know, dude. It's so funny. I was thinking this a lot where it was like, on the last one, I was like, okay, we're gonna try and do this weekly. Like
I
we're
know,
gonna
like
try.
we did
I
it a lot.
forgot
Like,
we did a lot, and actually, we probably should do the next one. Well, it's funny because I think the next one we'll do will be right before San Diego Comic Con, and we'll have plenty to talk about that because we'll probably do some preview teaser stuff about San Diego on that one. But I
totally.
do think I am going to answer more questions at some point. We will do it. So if you have questions that you want to ask about anything, just ask on this one, and I will try to catch up on and get everything down. But dude, it was funny. It was like, okay, we're gonna try to do this weekly, and then my life, near the kids getting sick, like somewhere in that realm, it was just like suddenly I went from being like, oh, I have a reduced schedule to now like I'm back. I'm not in the scary schedule again, but I'm definitely in the like, oh, I'm writing a lot again. There's so much
uh
again. So it was like we just kept missing each other and but I'm
yeah.
glad I'm here. I'm glad we finally made it work. We're here. We can talk about comic books.
Yes. Finally, we can get back into it. I've been missing it because the whole premise of my other channel is just I hang out with people who don't read them. So it's just me in like a vacuum
Yeah,
talking about comic books. And it's
I
nice to kind of
know.
just
I
yeah.
just said that to you this morning. I was bummed that you guys didn't like Force Works.
I'm s Well, I think you're gonna like the next episode because it may in fact be about the demise of a certain Justice League.
Oh boy, I'm okay. Don't tell me. Yeah, I'm very curious now because yeah, it's like I have so many thoughts on Justice League as a group, and I'm
Yeah.
really curious about what works and doesn't, and like why
Yeah. Well, this is
certain
this
things are
is
falling apart.
yeah. Well, it's all on our road to the Dark Crisis because eventually we're gonna jump into the Dark
Oh,
Crisis. So yeah, no, this
okay,
is
yeah.
yeah.
So all right. No, I mean, I've always, it's interesting. Like Justice League is such a fascinating group to me. I think about this a lot, where it's like sometimes team books. Oh man, we're already listen. As I was saying, like, so we're gonna talk about Superman a lot today. I promise to everybody.
Yeah.
We are gonna talk about Superman today, but now we're already on a tangent.
Well, I had an observation in my Force Works episode, and maybe I'd like to hear your opinion about
Yeah,
this.
sure, go
'Cause
for it.
I feel like deep under all of the stuff that ForceWorks has, all the baggage of West Coast Avengers to the
Yeah.
Abnett and Lanning, who I feel like they're doing a great job, but like they're just too excited. They just
Well,
want
they
to
also do a good job with big casts, like really
yeah,
big casts. They do good jobs with big casts. So
but underneath all this stuff, there is a Justice League International book. Like it feels like it's
Mhm.
JLI from Marvel, but it's 1994.
Well, that's
It's
what's
just
funny.
it
I was thinking about this a bit where I was like, because after I saw your video, I already told you this story, but I'll tell everybody else that like when I saw the beginning of the video, I was like, "Aw, I like Forkworks," and had that really cool variant cover that was a pain in the ass.
oh
You could never put back, but it was awesome. I remember laying on the floor of my room and being like, "Look at this thing," and then being like, "Oh shit, I this thing's
I've
never
ruined my
back
book.
up."
This
Yeah, I'm gonna this is never gonna be mint ever again.
That's
This is a
right.
thing. But, I was thinking about it, and I went and I actually read issue 1. So I was like, I went and read issue 1 again, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's so funny how much this was so" it's weird, it takes you back, and I was like, "Oh, it's so embedded in like you just said, in West Coast Avengers." And then I was like, "Wait, what happened in West Coast Avengers?" And I was like, "Oh, wait, like Mockingbird died?" I was, like, trying to remember stuff, and so I went back and I looked, and I was like it was so funny because it was like, that is in Marvel's, like, deep, deep, deep. Oh, yeah, so we started talking about this before. I this the deep, like, here's a big issue, and then here's, like, 4 crossovers in a row.
Yeah, no, it was
Like
Blood Ties, it was,
oh, yeah, dude,
before that
the
it was
Marvel
Galactic Storm, like, there's yeah,
dude,
it was
yeah,
just
there's
nonstop.
always something. I mean, it's funny, like, it's funny to think about how the space between Executioner Sog
Oh
and
my
Fatal
god.
Attraction is, like, 4 months.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, they
it's
don't
it's
get a
literally,
breath.
like, 4 or 5 months. Yeah, 'cause if you look at X Factor, it ends in, like, '86, and then '92, we're back in it.
Yep.
Right? Like, it is so fast how quickly it is interesting with that even when you look at X-Men, it's like that window of X-Men of, like, Executioner Song, and then 25 is Fatal Attraction, and then The Wedding is issue 30. It's
I know.
like, the level of how fast these things were happening, which is
Yep.
good, though. You and I talk about this a bit, where I do think that when you're working on, comics, you should think about how do you reinvent the book. It's funny, like, this shows you how our attention spans have changed. I think I would have argued you have to change your book around every 5 or 6 issues. Back then, you should have been able to have a year, like a year, and then you
That's the
do
thing.
something.
It
Now, then it was 6 because look at
Yeah.
what Scott Snyder did on Batman, where it was like he basically did something every 6 issues. Even when he was
Yep.
doing Year Year, it was modular. It was like 4-issue arc, 4-issue arc, 4-issue arc. Like there was stuff. But that's actually when I was on Flash, it was weird because on Flash, it was every 3 months was 6 issues because it was double ship. And so in my mind, I had to like change things up every 6 months or every 6
Yeah.
issues, but that was only 3 months. And what
Right.
that did to my brain afterward was, and I've had this conversation with other writers, and I've seen this play out in other books. You have to reinvent the book. When I say that is, you have to change your A plot. Basically, you have to make it so it's like if you're looking at like issue 7, I'll say issue 7 to do around. If you look at issue 7 and then you look at issue 10, right? Like, if the villain on 7 is doing the same shit they're doing on 10, you have a problem.
Right.
There has to be some kind of escalation between the 2, so it's like every 3 issues, every 4 issues I would say every 4, so it's like on the 4th issue, so 7, 8, 9, you could have it be but there has to be an escalation. There has to be
Yeah.
like a, some kind of journey just on the covers. When you get to 10, those 2 heroes, if they're the same heroes, if it's a hero and a villain on the cover of 7, if by the time you get to 10, it's the exact same 2 characters and they're doing the exact same thing, you have a problem. If they're not,
Yeah.
like, beating the shit out of each other or tore up or there's like, "Oh, no, the hero might lose," kinda cover, like, there has to be something. It's like just or a new element is added. So it's like, okay, if I'm talking about a Wolverine book, for example, it's like if issue 7 is Wolverine versus Sabretooth, it cannot be Wolverine versus Sabretooth on issue 10. However, if it's Sabretooth and Omega Red, now we're talking. Like, that's what I'm saying to you. I'm like, you have to find ways to add these extra elements to these books every 3 months, and it's crazy. And that's not to say you change things up. You're not like, "Oh, it's a completely different Wolverine now." It's like, no, no, I'm just saying, like, you gotta be able to, like, throw surprises at people. I mean, every issue is really you gotta do water cooler moments every single issue. You gotta do that and big cliffhangers that make people be like, "Oh my god, I cannot wait to read this book in a month." You know,
Yes.
there's 4 Wednesdays in between. That's 4 weeks worth of books that they're gonna read, 4 books that might steal their attention away. You gotta hold them for that month.
That's right.
So, like, those are the elements. We can get into all this stuff about fundamentals. I mean, you can watch Scott's class. He gets into this stuff a lot. But it's like, one of my big bugaboos is clarity of story. I was
Mm.
thinking about this yesterday where I was like, one of the most popular genres in all of like fiction is detective stories or cop shows, but detective stories. And I think this is part of why it is literally a person walking through the plot, asking people questions, and those people explaining things to them.
Yeah, just reminding the audience what they just watched, what they
Yeah.
just learned, and what they wanna know next. Like,
And the
it's
stories can be different, and
yeah.
you can see who's lying, but it's funny, like, it literally puts the main character in the role of the audience, where the audience is like, "Ask this question, ask this question." You know? It creates this really interesting, dynamic to, those shows, and I think that's something when you look at even Batman as a detective, like, he goes to Gordon, and Gordon is like, "This is what's happening."
Right.
I mean, I always look at even if you look at something like, Apocalypse Now, the movie, the beginning is this big trippy experience, but at some point in the first, like, 15 minutes, they pull Martin Sheen out of a shower, and they put him in front of Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford says, "Let me tell you what this movie's about." He
That's
literally is
right,
like,
that's
"I
right.
need you to go up this river and kill this guy at the top of the river."
Yep.
That is the movie, and it's gonna
That's
be hard, but we
yeah,
trust you to do it because you're a bit of a crazy person and you killed people, so we're gonna be fine. That is the fucking plot of that entire movie. They tell it to you in the
that's
very
true.
beginning, and then you to watch that journey happen, and I think that's something gets sometimes lost in comics is that information, but
That's
anyway,
fair.
that's a tangent. What I was gonna say to you about the Force Works thing is it's a retrofitting, rewinding your reality. What I thought was really interesting about Force Works was it's very similar to what happened to Titans in the early 2000s, where they were like,
Yeah,
"We're gonna have a Teen Titans book." But instead of having the other Titans book called Titans, you know what we're gonna call it? Outsiders.
yeah.
They were like, "We're gonna take another name and we're gonna put it on this." I think it was very similar. It was like, we have an Avengers book, West Coast Avengers. It doesn't I don't know, and that book was really popular for a while, you know?
It
So
was. It
yeah.
it made 102 issues. I think it was just
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
sales were probably not what they wanted, and also it I mean, it was a perfect storm. It's 1994. Marvel is right on the razor's edge of bankruptcy.
Yeah, there's all
Uh,
crazy stuff going on.
it's all coming apart, and I can imagine them saying, like, "We need to cut the fat. We need to cancel one Avengers book." And the one that sells the best is regular Avengers as opposed to West Coast Avengers.
Yeah.
And then they went, "Well, we need a new X-Men book, or we need to X-Men up the Avengers." what do we do? And that's why I think the exact same cast from West Coast Avengers is Forceworks. Is they're just like, no, if it's selling so horribly, we can repackage the old team to a new audience who didn't even know who they were in the first place, and it'll be like it's new characters. Like
Yeah.
it'll work on every conceivable level.
What's so weird about Force Works is that that is kind of what ends up going into the cartoon.
Yeah, the Iron Man cartoon is happening like almost simultaneously, and it literally is Forceworks. Century, who is
Yeah, I
not
know. Is
a character until Forceworks is born, is on the show.
Dude, it's so weird. It's so weird. I think about Century sometimes. It's such a cool name. It's a cool name.
we
Uh,
my team disagree. They were like Century, why? And I'm like, well, it's actually really clever. It's got two reasons. The first of which is he can live up to 100 years. And they
mhm.
were like, so like most of us. And I was like, that's true. And also, he is 100 guys.
Yeah. Here's an amalgam of all these things. Anyway, all right, we should talk about Superman.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, I'm excited because Superman 28 is coming, and
Yeah,
I saw some art for this book, and I mean, just
dude,
how exciting!
God,
What a
Dan
good
Mora,
looking book.
Alejandro, they're so good. So yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah, we're gonna talk about Superman now for a little bit. Anybody is watching, we're gonna
get
talk
ready,
about
put your capes on.
yeah,
Uh,
we're gonna talk about me going to Superman set a little bit, mostly just because the pictures were finally revealed, and we can talk about that a little bit.
yep,
Without getting, I can't get any specifics on some stuff, but I can talk about the pictures.
right. You can tell us at
But
least what you think the plot is.
oh, I can tell you the whole movie. No, I'm not doing it. But so we yeah, so Superman 28 that comes out in July, it is the beginning of a new story arc that we're telling. It's a prelude. So issues 28, 29, and 30 are a prelude to some bigger stuff we're going to be doing in the fall. But these three issues are really important. At the end of All In, Booster went into that rift, right? And he got lost and he didn't know where he was.
Yeah,
Uh, he was supposed to be going into the absolute world, but what you saw was like, without getting into spoilers, something else happened. And then you realize he was there with this like giant dark side and he got attacked by Darkseid's Legion.
yep.
And so we've been like, whatever happened with that? We've been slowly teasing, Darkseid's Legion is kind of operating in the shadows.
There was
Darkseid
the
made
free comic book day
a
issue
free
that
comic book bit.
set things
Well,
up.
we did Summer of Superman. In that at the very ending, it was like, oh, Booster's trapped in the future, and we tease that a little bit. And so we've been setting up these pieces with, with the Legion and with Superman and Booster Gold missing. And so now that's what's happening in 28 is that Superman goes on this mission. There's a bunch of other crazy stuff that happens. There's some really fun guest stars and some stuff I think will be really surprising to people. But once you read 28, you're gonna feel like, oh yeah, we're definitely heading in a direction. And so that's what with issue 28, and Dan Mora just killed it. It's a really beautiful issue. It's one of my favorite issues we've done of the run. It's him encountering the Dark Legion for the first time, or the Dark Side's Legion. The thing about him with this is it's like, we've been kind of slowly seeding this idea that Superman is unsure of what the future looks like. And now that he's seeing this, it's like, I feel like Clark always had a little bit of a cheat code. Like the existence of the Legion of superheroes in the future always kind of signaled to him that like there is a possibility things are going to be okay, but also they worshipped him.
Right.
Right? The idea that they're like, you did good, and so we want to become your image. Like we want to follow your way. And then seeing what he ends up witnessing from the future and seeing this dark side legion that instead of being inspired by Superman, they were inspired by dark side. It's hard for him, It sucks to be like, here are some of my friends. It's like there's a line that Martha makes in the issue 28 that sort of compares to it, but it's like going to your high school reunion. You want to hang out with your high school friends or your college buddies, whatever, right? You're like, yes. And then they're just awful human beings.
Right.
Like you're like, what happened? And I think, and that is very defeating for Superman, that moment to for the first time in a long time, questioning the future and questioning these things. And like, not to say what I do matters, because at the end of the day, Superman doesn't, he's not doing it for any kind of attention or anything like that. He's doing it because he knows it's the right thing to do every time.
Yep.
But it's hard to be confronted with this and this level of uncertainty for him, and to go up and be like, to go up against people that he used to call friends,
Yeah.
to have to go up against them. And then we'll explore that and how the Dark Side's Legion was created. That'll be a plot point, and we'll be able to play with some of these different parts. You'll see like it'll like the story in these three issues are really about, it's really is a prelude, and it's him having to go find Booster and bring Booster back, but also he doesn't go alone. There's somebody else that goes with him, and that's a really big fun part of the story that we've managed to keep secret.
Yeah.
Which I'm still shocked by. But he ends up going on this cool adventure to rescue Booster, and so that's what and that'll really feed into like what happened to Booster, what's been going on with Booster, and then it'll feed into some of the stuff we do next. Like it's gonna be it's really a fun story too. Like it's just something I don't know, it's something really different than what I've been doing in the book a little bit, but it is very much like a Superman adventure story going up against like an impossible task, an impossible enemy. Uh but yeah, I'm really excited about it, and I hope people check it out. Like the pre-orders, basically now, like when this video is out, it'll be time to FOC, like it'll be time to get those pre-orders in, talk to your retailer, let them know, like, we're gonna try and do a big push this week, basically saying like, "Hey, this is an important issue. Please check it out." I might even try to send advanced PDFs out to people to see if we can get people looking at it. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, I'm really proud of the story, but dude, you
Yeah.
saw the pages.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's gorgeous. I'm blown away. I mean, like the book itself is so great every
Oh, thanks.
time it comes out. It looks great. It reads great. It matters. It has like stakes, but also manages to still be a Superman book at the end of the day. Like at the end of the day, this is not just like a like sampler that gets you to the big thing. It's just a really pure blood Superman book that
Yeah.
also happens to, seed what's to come
Other stuff. Yeah.
and other stuff.
I think it'll be fun. I look forward to the moment where I am doing Superman and I'm mostly just telling Superman stories, and it's a little bit away from event planning or event stuff. That will come. I feel like the fact that these 3 issues lead into it. I mean, it's funny because like 19 through 27 did not really. I mean, there were subplots and stuff, which is what I like superhero books that have these kind of like, here's one page that isn't gonna get paid off for another year kind of
Yeah.
story. No, I
Yeah.
mean to talk about the late great Peter David. Like I was a big Peter David kid. We've talked about this, Spider-Man 2099, Aquaman, X-Factor, Hulk,
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
can't I think he's arguably probably the most iconic Hulk writer, right? I mean, I feel
Easily. Yeah. It's
the
it's it's him right at the top.
no offense to anybody else. I mean, I like what Philip's doing.
No.
I was texting Philip yesterday about how he should buy this toy. This is my brother.
Oh my god. You got it.
I got it. This thing is awesome, dude. I haven't opened it yet, but when I got in the mail, I was like, "Oh, that's a big boy. That's a big.
Yeah.
Good job,
You know
big
what I
boy."
really
Yeah.
can't wait for? I don't want to derail us, but like
Yeah.
that Giganto figure, which is
I
oh my
haven't
god.
seen it.
Oh, they did a run just like those. They're
Yeah.
2-packs from Marvel versus Capcom.
Oh no, I do know this. I do know this. I do know
Yeah,
this.
it's
Yeah. Okay.
Shumagorath.
I I I was debating getting those. You know how I feel about the Marvel Legends. Like I get not to derail too much with Superman. Um, Even though I have a ton of Superman stuff in my office. I only get Marvel Legends of certain things. So like Spider-Man, I have all the Spider-Man Marvel Legends, and I have I even have like rando the Spider-Man characters. If they're technically a Spider-Man character, or they come in like a Spider-Man pack. If Spider-Man's on the box, I guess I'm getting it.
Yeah.
Um,
So you have Puma,
Fantastic-
you have Morlun, you got them all.
yeah, I do.
I actually, so do I.
Why? I think, are you selling some of them or something?
No. I want to get rid of some of my Funko Pops, but no,
Yeah.
I
No,
keep
no.
my Marvel Legends. I got my Scorpion. I got like the
Yeah, I have a
reissues from the
Scorpion.
animated series. They're so
Yep,
great.
all those. Yeah, dude, I have that because that Vulture design is dope. The
Oh,
one
it is.
it was for the cartoon, but that I use in the cartoon. I have that over here. Anything from the animated series I get.
I got Black
the-
Daredevil, like black and white or black and red Daredevil
Yeah, I
power
got that.
suit.
Yep.
Yeah.
If it, I'm telling you, like I, I'm a sucker for certain things. I make like game time decisions, but I have like I have a good retro Punisher. I have all the Secret War Marvel Legends they've been putting out, those
Nice.
retro hard ones.
Yes.
But Fantastic Four. So I guess I have all the New Warriors except for
Yeah, I know you're a big New Warriors fan.
Yeah, I haven't really get Night Thrasher yet. He's the one I haven't been able to get yet. I have to like, if I see him at a convention, I just grab it off the rack or whatever. Fantastic Four, so Doom, the whole thing.
I got the Doom one from the cartoon, but like it's not really from the cartoon. Like it comes with a little Darkhold. It's amazing.
Yeah, I got it over here.
Yeah.
But the thing I always avoid is the X-Men.
You have to, because otherwise it's
really
just going
slow.
to take over.
That's I dude, I was over here and I was just trying to clean up like the Marvel section of my office the other day and I spotted a Wolverine action figure over here and
Yeah,
I was
what are
like,
you
it
doing
was still
here?
in the box and I'm like, when did I get this? Where did this even come from? I have a Wolverine because I have a Wolverine. So I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
But it's dangerous because you're just like, okay, they're in storage right now, but I'm like, I have that Havoc and Polaris 2-pack. Do I buy Wolfsbane? Do I
Oh my
buy
god.
Multiple Man? But if I get Multiple Man, I gotta get the blue and gold Multiple Man. I don't want the green one. It's like it
Yeah.
becomes a whole thing, and then you're like, well, if I'm getting that one, do I get Cannonball? Oh no, if I have Cannonball, do I go get this? It's like it becomes this like,
You gotta get Boom
oh
Boom if you're gonna get
no.
Cannonball. Like, it's
I know. Thank you for calling her Boom Boom, by the way.
well, does she have another name?
Yes.
What? They call
Although
her something else now?
we're not gonna talk about this. We're not gonna talk about
Alright.
it. Yeah, she
Fair
has
enough.
multiple names. Anyway, because otherwise,
Well,
again, slippery slope.
yeah, that's true, that's true.
So Superman 28.
Yes, is coming out in July. Pre-order your
Yeah,
books, but check out the next 3
yeah.
issues, at least, are
Well,
gonna be this big cool arc.
yeah, and I think, we've been building this story and the stuff of this will have big ramifications for Superman next year. Like it'll definitely tie into stuff we're doing in the fall. That's not been announced yet. We have some really cool plans coming. But the stuff that happens in these 3 issues is really it's gonna do a lot for the bigger DCU plans, and then it'll have a major impact on a couple things we have planned for 26. Like one thing I'm really excited about that we're doing in 26 with Superman. It's obviously way too soon to talk about it, but it's one of the things I think is like one of the crazier. I told you what it was. So it's like
Yes. Yes, that's
it's
right.
one of the crazier things I think I've done at not DC, but definitely with Superman. It might even be
Yeah.
it's up there. It's definitely a curveball, but I'm very excited about it. I'm curious to see what people are gonna think once we get there.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting, but I'm really excited about 28. Yeah, so pre-order 28, check it out. I gave Sal the covers 28 through 30. You guys can see them. You can tell what it's about. It's Superman dealing with the ramifications of what happens to the Legion of Superheroes, and the fact that there's this dark side Legion of Superheroes that it is his Legion now,
Yeah.
and then the idea of trying to save Booster Gold. And like that's a big mission statement for those 3 issues that'll then lead into something really big. So please check out those. Again, what led us on that segment, that segue was the whole thing of like Peter David. And Peter David was so great about
Yeah.
the subplots and just like building and building and building and building and then retreating some subplots to come back around. And
Yes.
like I like that kind of storytelling because it makes you feel like things are earned, but also if you hang on to a book, things get paid off. Like it's not
Yeah.
just nothing is left on the table or forgotten about. I try to always bring things around as best I can, and then it's like in issue 26, like we built up that Lena was going to leave Metropolis, and then that got picked up in Supergirl. So it's like I'm always trying to find these ways of taking these things and then branching them out into the DCU, but just building up subplots. And again, 28 through 30 they're a really big part of that. So that's part why I'm wearing my Superman shirt today, which I told Sal this morning. I feel like I was wearing this last time we talked because I think it was Superman Day.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, dude, yeah, I'm excited. I hope people check it out and keep looking at the book because I mean it is the flagship Superman book, and we're really trying to put the big stories that we're going to be doing with All In and the stuff we have planned are all going to be built up with Superman in the Superman title.
Yeah. I wanted to talk really quick about an element from Superman that was
Yeah.
a really fun, exciting thing that has come seemingly to a conclusion, which is Superwoman.
Oh well, just keep
Well, we'll see.
reading.
Because Lois just
There's
lost
a
her
line that
powers.
Mr. Trivik says he's like they might
Oh,
come. Who
they
knows?
might come back. Oh, okay,
Who knows?
okay.
Who
Well,
knows
I'm
what happened?
excited about it because I liked that moment. There's a really interesting element to it where like there is this potential that you could stretch throughout the entire run of, let's say, for the sake of argument, that Lois loses her powers. She had these powers. She doesn't have them anymore. She had this connection with her husband who has these
Yeah.
powers all the time. Superman finally has this connection with Lois that he didn't have before, that he never knew or never really needed, but now is taken. And it's like sad.
We talked about this a little bit in 27, which comes out this week. Like comes out when like probably right after this
Yeah.
airs. Yeah, they talk about it a little bit.
Cool.
So yeah, Clark and Lois do talk about it. And then we lead into the bigger
Into
stuff,
the bigger stuff.
right? But that story's not over. It's like she used up all the energy she had absorbed, and they had warned her that could happen. But that's the thing is that like there is like Terrific says to her in 26, there's always a possibility they can come back. I had to do more tests, and she's like, I don't want to do any more tests. I'm done.
Right.
So that is not over because the other part of that's not over is I remember the powers were stolen from Zod, and Zod is in space with no powers,
Right.
and he was super pissed. And it's with Zod because and I talked before where it's like Zod is before he had powers, he was a really scary general. I mean, that dude was no joke. He
Right.
was such a dangerous person. They put him in the Phantom Zone. Like,
With no
that is the
powers.
danger. Yeah, with
Exactly.
no powers. That's how dangerous he was. And so just because he doesn't have powers doesn't mean that he's not a
A problem.
scary villain, you're not a problem, and so he's on his way back, and so that's also a part of what we're building, but again, some of the stuff isn't gonna come to fruition for a while just because I like doing that, I like having these stories that kind of, these subplots that build and kinda interweave and build to something bigger, I like all these pieces, and then it eventually it'll all collide, and you could tell even the stuff that we're doing, like, once we reach 27, there's some interesting developments, 27 with Lex,
Yes.
uh, yeah, there's so many stuff that kinda happens in the book that just keeps building to these stories and stuff that we're telling, and it'll be, like, I have a game plan in my head for what I wanna do with the book, and so I'm just really excited about it. I think it'll be
Yeah.
cool. The lowest thing, yeah, it's not totally over with.
Okay. All
It'll
right.
take some time, but we'll get there.
Well, speaking of Superman, we know from social media and your own posts that you got to be on the set for
Yeah,
Superman, which is coming
yeah,
out soon. Uh,
yeah, I'm
one of
very
the
excited.
one of the big exciting moments from the photos, which is kind of like a confirmation that I don't know if a lot of people knew, was that the Fortress of Solitude is a set.
It was a set. Yeah, dude, I mean, again, I can talk about what's in the photos.
Yeah, like we
Right.
saw that I
Dude,
don't think we're telling tales at a school here. You
no, we
were
walked
in the
into
Fortress of Solitude.
we walked into it, and dude, it was an emotional experience. That was trippy. Like, to be because it was like we were going and we were all really excited. Part of that was one of the fun parts about that. We'll get into the fortress stuff too, but one of the really fun parts about that was like it's always fun to be on these like clandestine missions with other creators. And
Yeah.
I didn't know who was going. We didn't know who was going, and then it was like okay, I knew Scott was going, I knew Jason was going, but literally it was like who is going to be there when we get there. And the first person I saw when I got into the hotel was Frank Wiley, and so I made a beeline for Frank and started talking, had lunch and drinks with him, and then, Jason was there and Scott was there and Troy Orway was there, and of course Dan Jurgens was there, which was awesome because it's like, getting to do any of that kind of stuff with Dan Jurgens, it's like that was like my Superman guy as a kid. We've talked about this, how much death of Superman, and I always go to Dan and talk. A lot of times when I'm working on anything Superman related, I pitch it to Dan just to
Yep.
kind of get his overall take
Read.
on things. Like he's just I really like Dan a lot, and so he was there, and it was pretty great to be around these creators. John Ostrander was there. Him and I were sitting next to each other, and he started talking about Amanda Waller at one point,
That's
and like
cool.
I never met him before,
Really?
no, I hadn't. So we were just getting to sit down and talk to him for a while and have dinner with him, and so that was one of the best parts of that experience. Is all of that. I mean, one of the scariest parts is we got there and realizing Mark Waid wasn't there. Happened to like be like, am I like it was a weird moment of like, oh no, how do I call Mark Waid and talk to him about this?
Yeah.
Like, why is he not here? And I'm not gonna be the one to tell him, you know? But I did talk to him afterward and he told me what happened. He had been in a convention in another country and
Oh,
he couldn't go. And so he was super bummed he couldn't
he was
go.
on the list though.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but he
Yeah.
couldn't go, and
Oh,
that was a big bummer. But so yeah, we're there. We don't, it was very much like we don't know what we're gonna do over here. But it was an amazing experience. We talked about this before because we've known for the last year. Like there was a picture a year ago that we actually
yeah.
went with a group of creators. But I think that part, like getting to walk into the Fortress of Solitude and just seeing it, dude, that was like, because yeah, it was this massive set. It was not a here's a green screen. It was a set. I mean, dude, there was snow on the ground.
Oh, that's cool.
Like, we were walking in snow. It was that level of, like,
Immersion.
yeah, you walk through the big door, the whole thing, we're in there, and, getting to talk to James Gunn about stuff while we're standing there, and then just, like, dude, it was so nutty, and in the trailers, you've seen those, Superman robots,
The robots, yes.
and getting to see the Superman robots in person and just, like, here is this thing. That was so, like, it was such an amazing experience, and then at one point, again, so I can talk about the pictures. And one of the pictures, we're sitting in these chairs, and Superman is standing there. I'm just gonna call him Superman, dude, because like when that dude entered the room,
Yeah.
It really was, like, the closest to, like, "Oh, fuck, that's Superman." Like, it felt like when you're at a convention, you see a cosplayer and stuff like that, there's a different vibe. When that dude walked in, it was like, oh my god, dude, it was a trippy experience to, like, it
Yeah.
got me right here. It, like, got me hard. And then, getting to talk to, so it's funny, I sent you that text, but it's like I sent this text and we're watching this after the pictures were available on the internet. Um, but what was funny is we were in they were doing pictures and stuff, and so we were standing there talking, and I actually, I walked up to Nicholas Hoult, who is dressed as Lex, and dude, that dude was also awesome. It was like, that is Lex Luthor.
Yep.
And I walked up to him and I was like, "Hey man, I have a funny story to tell you. I was actually behind you in line to get into California Adventure, like 8 or 9 months ago. Like, I
Yeah.
was behind you in line in California Adventure. My wife, I recognized you. My wife was like, 'We should say something.' And I was like, 'No.' And this is before it was announced he was Lex.
Right.
So I was like, 'No, no, no, this is a dude.' I knew who he was, and I had watched a lot of movies with him, and I like him as an actor, but he was there with his wife and then their kids, I'm guessing her parents. Like, it was clearly a family thing, and I was
Yeah.
like, this it's I was like, it is 6:45 in the morning.
Oh my god.
We're doing basically rope drop at California Adventure. We're
Yeah.
doing rope drop slash it is early morning. Like, we're not going to bother this man and his family.
Right.
Like, and we're not even the front of the line. We're,
Yeah.
like, halfway through, and we're waiting for this line to gradually move just so we can get through the California Adventure security. Was that right? Yeah, we're just trying to get into California Adventure. So we're just, like, in that line. If you go to California Adventure, if you stay at the Grand California, you can, go in early. All the parks, all the hotels, you can go in half hour early, but
Yeah.
this one, because that entrance is inside California Adventure, it's, like, even easier. You just, like, boop, right in. And
Yeah.
so we were with him in line. I mean, the whole process, the whole thing, going through security, he's, like, right next to me the whole time, and I was
Yeah.
just like, anything. And then I watched him and his family. We went one way, they went the other. At the crossroads, and you
You're
leave.
like, "Whew,
We
okay, good." Now it's
I
not
was
like
like, "Oh
weird.
god, alright." I know we went, and I think we went on, funny enough, I think my family, we hauled ass to, oh, that's right, dude. I was wearing all this Marvel gear. That's so I was, like, head to toe, my entire family, head to toe Marvel stuff. Um, and we went over, I was wearing a Spider-Man shirt, everything, and we went over, this is what it was, we hauled, because it was our first time going to Avengers Campus. So we were
Oh,
at
that'll
Avengers
do it.
Campus.
Yeah.
They didn't even go, I think they went to the Midway Mania stuff. I think they were heading that direction. But we were, like, making a beeline. We met Doctor Strange. It was awesome. So,
Nice.
it was a great experience. But I was like, I'm not gonna tell him. I'm not gonna interrupt this guy. So when I see him in person, I'm like, I have to say something. So I go up and I'm like, hey, I tell him this story, and he's laughing. And he's like, you should have. He's like, your wife was right. You should have said hi. But she does not let me down to this day. She literally,
Sure.
when she saw those pictures online, she was like, we should have said hi to him. Like,
Yeah.
so he and I started talking about that. He was really friendly, really nice. And then we started talking about Lex and just, what it was like playing Lex, what his thinking was on Lex. And while we're having this conversation about Lex, Superman comes over and starts talking to us about Lex. So there's the three of us standing there talking about Lex. And I feel like I had no fear on that trip. I was like, I'm gonna talk to whoever. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I'm invited, I'm here.
yeah, I mean, let's have fun. Let's talk
It's a
about it.
small
So
group too in these photos, like, the picture of you on the set of, The Fortress of Solitude, like,
yeah,
it's you, it's Jim Lee, it's Jason Aaron, it's James Gunn, like, but you guys just it's a tight group. It's just kinda
it was a
like
small group, but yeah, we were hanging out. It was really an awesome experience. But uh, so we're the three of us were standing there, and I think Kevin McGuire actually was the one that was like, somebody was like, "Let's do a group photo. Like, let's do a group photo." And then Kevin McGuire was like, "Are we doing it at an angle? We're doing Justice League. Like,
okay, I
we
was
are
gonna
doing."
ask who suggested to do the JLI angle?
I feel like I'm like 95% sure it was Kevin McGuire, and then
The
James was like, "Yes, we were doing that." And so when they took the picture, I just happened to be standing with Lex and Superman, and so I was like, "Oh," they were like, "Well," and they knew the photo, so everybody turned, and
Yep.
it was funny because some people are smiling, and then
Yeah.
you go with the three of us, and we're like mad dogging the camera. But it was like,
Yes.
I remember after it was over, Carrie showed me the pictures. Somebody from DC showed me the pictures, like, that day, 'cause we were all talking, and Jim had a bunch of the pictures, and there was this debate on when we were allowed to show the pictures, and it was like nobody, because we didn't have our phones with us.
Oh, they
We didn't
took them.
have phones with us.
That's great.
She showed me that picture, and I was like, "Man, at some point, someday, I get to show a picture of myself hanging out with Superman and Lex Luthor, like,
Yeah.
someday." And then it took a year. The other thing that was funny about that, so after this happened, so I talked to Nicholas Hoult for a while. I repeatedly ran into him. And
That
I don't mean physically, I mean, like, to the point where I literally at one point had to be like, "I
I'm
just
not
shouldn't have stalking you."
yeah.
Like, I had to say those words. I'm talking about I ran into him in the hallway of the hotel. I ran into him in the restaurant. I ran into him in the elevator. I was like and he was always very nice. He was
Yes.
always cool. You know, at one point, he and I were talking in the hallway just about stuff, like, just
Yeah.
talking stuff in the hallway. And then he was like, "Oh, are you guys still here?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, we're all hanging out over here. We're having drinks and stuff." And he was like, "I'm gonna come and say hi." So he came over and he said hi to everybody. And he came over and was like talking to us about stuff and just
Nice.
thanking everybody for coming and hanging out and asking what they thought. It was the really good dude. Like that was a really fun experience. The also thing that happened on that trip was they were filming that Saturday Night Live movie on that set. And
Oh.
at one point we're at dinner. I'm not gonna get in trouble for telling you the story. We're at dinner. So it's not related to Superman. So we're gonna
Right.
segue. This is not a Superman story.
Yeah.
So we're on the set, we're having dinner, we're all hanging out, and I'm sitting there with Jim and Scott and I think Jason. And I had only at that point, it was funny. I barely knew Jason Aaron at that point. We've known each other, we've bumped into each other,
Really?
never like got to hang out and talk. And we have a lot of stuff in common. And so like we're both obsessed with Disney parks and amusement parks. Disney park. He knows this. We both know this. So we emailed each other and we've talked to cons, but I've never like sat down and had a dinner with him, you know? And
Yeah.
so we were talking about that. So while we're sitting there, we're hanging out, the table next to us is some people working on the Saturday Night Live movie, and there's like some actors and stuff. But one of the people over there is Robert Wall. And
Oh.
I was like, you know, I love obviously, you know, it's like him being Knox and Batman, but also he was on, you know, Arliss. Like he created Arliss, and I like that
Exactly.
when I was a kid. And and so I was at the table, I'm sitting there eating and everybody's there, and then he was leaving and he was coming around and he was right next to me, and I went, fuck it. I stood up and I was like, Robert, I gotta talk to you for a second. And he was like, "Oh yeah, sure," you know. And I was like, "I just want you to know how much I love Arliss. Like Arliss was great." And he was so just like, I think at that moment, because that's something that's like his baby,
Right.
he was just
Yeah.
like, "Oh, cool. This isn't about Batman."
Yeah, you're not gonna ask me about
Like,
Batman because you're wearing a Superman shirt right now.
no, I wasn't. I At that point I wasn't. I think I was wearing like what was I wearing at that point? I was wearing a nice shirt. We were at dinner.
Oh,
So I
okay.
was like, you know, we are at dinner at a nice restaurant. I wasn't like nerded out.
Yeah.
And so I was like this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know, I really liked Arliss. We talked for a bit, and we just talked for a quick moment, and then he was like, "What's your name?" And we had this like really nice conversation. So it was really nice guy.
Nice.
He's such a funny comedian that you feel intimidated by him. Like he's one of
Yes.
those. Oh, this guy could make a couple lines. He's smart and quick. So you're like, oh, that guy could probably tear me down if I was bothering him.
Uh-huh.
So we talked really quickly, but then as I was leaving, as we were separating, I was like, oh, but dude, I have to say Batman. Like I have. And he laughed, and I was like, "No, I have to. I have to say,
Yeah.
like, you know, I love that movie. You're great in it. You're one of the best parts of it. I wish that had been a bigger thing. Like the fact that no one had put Knox in the comics. I'm sure there's some kind of weird thing you can't, but it's
Right.
like,
Probably.
you know, it's the same thing where I've asked about Max Shrek from Batman Returns, and it's like never worked out. I think it's actually because I don't have a
A Bat book.
other
Like,
than I don't have a well that, but I think in terms of me pitching at the times I've talked about it, you know, one thing that Marie's really good about. Marie Javen is good at a lot of stuff, but she definitely asks the questions of like why.
right. She's like,
Why?
is
What's
there a
next? Where
reason
does
to put
that
Max Shrek in
go?
there
Is there a
besides that you
reason
love
other
that
than I'm
movie?
a nerd? Like
Yeah.
you have to have a thing. They can't just be this, you know, you have to actually have a story reason, you know. But
Yeah.
I'm surprised no one's ever brought at least I don't think so. If anyone in the comments knows if as Knox ever appeared in the comics,
I love that.
not including his
Oh.
appearance in the first episode of the Crisis
Oh.
CW.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not including any kind of adaptation. I'm
Oh,
talking
the
about
Jerry
full on
Ordway thing. Yeah,
in
no, you can't.
yeah,
Like,
full on in continuity. Yeah, I have that over here. In continuity thing. I'm curious if that has ever
yeah.
happened.
I have a
But yeah,
question.
just fun. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for you regarding the like Marie Javen's you know, like question answer, like you have to justify it. And you're very much about this as well. Like
Yeah.
we talked about
Where does
like,
it
you know,
go?
in our Q and in our
Yeah.
Q&As and stuff, like it has to have you can't just have you ever been in a situation where you've been explaining it or you have an answer or you're trying to come up with one and the answer is just because we have to do this.
Oh yeah. I thought you were gonna say because I want to. because
Oh, no,
that's
no, no.
always an answer
Well,
too,
sometimes
because I
want and
think there
have are intersected, but, like, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't have, like I know it's just because it's the right thing to do. Like, I don't have, like, a
oh,
great story justification for it. It's just it has to happen.
that's tough. I mean, I think there's fundamentals that you should be
Sure.
very or that you should do.
Right.
Um, it's tough. I mean, I learned this working on Flash a lot because it was like, I wanted to bring everyone back immediately. Like immediately. I'm talking about like issue 12, everybody was back.
Yeah.
It took 100 issues. But I was like, my mission here is to get all these pieces back on the table because I thought it was a bummer they were gone. Um, and I was like, oh, I really want to have Bart back. But
Yeah.
then the question was always, where does he go?
Right. What are you gonna do with him after
What
he's
do we do
back?
with him? So that was the thing. And then so once Bendis was like, I'm gonna do Young Justice with the kids again, I was like, great, I get to bring him back. Like
Yeah.
now I know where he's going because he can't just be another character in Flash because I already have Kid Flash. So it was like there's always so much they're allowing you to do. And then Wally was in Titans. Have to do. I mean, it depends because sometimes you get a call where it's like this crossover is coming or this event is coming and you got to do this, and it's like okay. It's the right thing to do. Questions come up sometimes. Who is this? One of the questions you have to ask yourself:
Who is this for?
who is this for? Who is this for? Who are you appeasing with this? Like, there are certain things that I told you the story before where I feel like when you hear about, and this gets tough because you do want to listen to the fans and you do want to like. At the end of the day, it's tough. I think one of the hard parts of this is the idea that comics are art, but also it's commercial,
Commerce. Yeah.
all the commerce. So that can be difficult sometimes. Well, the question I always think of when I hear about listening to the fans, the question I always ask is, should Dick be with Barb or Starfire?
Shit, he hasn't been with Starfire in like decades.
But there are fans who think he should
Because the cartoon.
because of the cartoon, or just in general.
Or
There are
just
people
old
that are
school
like
fans who are just like,
old
I
school
love
fans.
Starfire. There's a
Yeah,
Twitter
or some
dedicated
people,
following. Yeah, I know.
some people are like, I don't want him with anybody, and so that becomes the question of who do you listen to? Do you listen to the majority? But then what is the majority?
Right.
Right? Like it becomes this really interesting conversation. So that becomes another question of like have to. Like I'm trying to think of things where I was like on a book and I was like, okay, I have to do this for these reasons. I mean, I think it depends. Like you're thinking about like I have to do this because sales. Like
No,
I
no,
gotta
no, no. I mean,
from
like,
before.
it's
I
it's
gotta
more like
access
like
stuff.
like
Go ahead.
this is so then this happens, and they go, why? When you're pitching and when you're talking about it, and they go, why? Like, why would that happen? And you're like, well, like, and they're like, yeah, but like, couldn't there be this, and this, and shouldn't they do that? And you go, I don't have like a great reason for why it has to happen outside of the fact that it just does.
You can game all that out though. You can figure it out. That happens in the room sometimes where you're like, well, I want this thing to happen.
Right,
So
because
how
it's
do I
cool.
get but here's the thing, a lot of times if you're planning this stuff out far enough, if you go, "Here's this cool thing," because I actually think that's a good conversation to have with your editor and as a writer anyway, is like, every once in a while, you do wanna be like, "I have this really big fun idea."
Yeah,
And it's like, okay, if you're having this conversation and with enough time, you could say, "I have this really big fun idea. I wanna do this thing. I think it's gonna be really cool." Then the have to question is that you have to earn it.
right.
So how do I work my way backwards? How do I do this? Like, remember when I pitched, it's funny, like, I think Flash War was close to getting rejected at one point early on because I think there was a lot of conversations about theme versus like there was a moment at DC where everything was about theme versus like something happening.
Right.
And that's something sometimes I feel like is lacking. It's like something has to happen in your book. Like I think it has to happen. You can
Yeah.
you can sit there and tell me a message and all this, but something has to happen. And something has to happen every issue, really. And it's like there's ways of fudging that a bit. Like I was saying before, you could have these things kind of go, but it's like water cooler moments, whatever. But there was a moment, and I remember talking to Dan and pitching Flash War to him, and he was like, "Okay, well, if that's what we're gonna do," because he liked it a lot. He saw it. He was like, "I understand this. But yeah, we're gonna do it." And he's like, "Well, if that's gonna happen," and I pitched to him a year out, a whole year. Like
Yeah.
I was pitching it to him when 25 had just come out. So you're talking about almost a full year out. I was pitching this idea, and I was already writing some of the issues after that, so I knew where I was in the book. And he was like, "For that to happen, for you to have Flash War, you have to do these things."
Mm.
And so I'm like, "Okay, I can do those things to get there." So that's sometimes the have to is like, I have this really big. So what I'm saying to you is, if you're like, I have this really big fun idea, and the reasoning is because I think we should do that. Like that is
Yeah.
we should do. Well, look at I mean, I wasn't in the room. There's multiple versions of this story and it changes, but I think it was somebody in the comments might know this better, or the people who are in the room can comment. New Avengers. When
Mm.
I believe somebody made a comment, it was on Brevoort or somebody else. I can't remember who actually said it. Somebody in the room said we should put Spider-Man and Wolverine on the Avengers.
Yes. I wanna say that was Bendis.
No, no, no. No, no, Bendis so somebody said it and Bendis was like, but they made a comment of like, it was actually this. It was, "We shouldn't do that." And
Mhm.
then Brian was like, "No, no, 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 we should do that. We have to do
I
that."
see.
Now it's like, "Oh, no, this makes more sense now." Like Brian was so good at saying my book is the most important book in the Marvel universe. Like every time he just was, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
he did that better than I think I've really ever seen anyone do. I can't think of anybody who was able to, because I'm not talking about your group. I'm talking about the universe. I mean,
Yep.
he's the one that shaped Avengers into being the book for
Yeah.
that and you look at the stuff, even when he was doing Iron Man, it was like Iron Man was leading to Civil War. So it's like Civil War 2. So it was like he did, and New Avengers led obviously to House of M, and then,
House of M, Secret Invasion,
I
Siege,
mean,
everything. Yeah.
basically Marvel for 10 years was
Yeah.
Brian, right? So it's like he was really good at that. And so Brian in that moment, rightfully so, being like, no, that the thing you just said we shouldn't do, that is the thing we should do.
Right.
That is the thing we should do. And then Brevoort said, no, I don't
Mhm.
want I don't want to do that. And then later in the day it was like, the reason why I'm saying I don't want to do that is, to me, that's not the Avengers, but that is correct. Like
I see. He's like,
he
I
knew.
had a
Like
yeah.
Brevoort is like, he's like how I can be precious about these things sometimes too. So it's like, but and we all do, we all have weird things involving comics, whether it's, I don't say weird, but we have like things that we're like, this is what this thing is, where
Yes.
this is what Justice League is. This is what the Avengers are. This is what the X-Men is. Right? Like everyone has their kind of idea of it. And then somebody comes in and says, well, what if we did this?
Yeah.
And sometimes it really works. And I think New Avengers is a great example of, well, we have to do that.
Yeah.
Like we have to do that. How are we not going to do that? And then it's like, what's funny about that is the math is so pure, because it's like we've had this conversation. I love that Avengers run. So it's like, the math is so pure because the original Avengers get together because Loki does some shit, and then the group of characters who don't know each other is suddenly a team, right?
Yep.
That math just repeats itself.
Yeah.
There's the out at the raft,
Yep.
and the characters that happen to be there
Yep. Yep.
become a team. Like that's just is the correct math for the Avengers.
Yeah.
But that thing I'm saying to you is that have to thing of like, in that room, you hear that Spider-Man, Wolverine, and the Avengers, and also Sentry too. It's just a smart decision.
Yeah.
Like such an interesting like wild card. Like what? Like it was so smart. And then being like, oh yeah, we're gonna make this work. And then you have to do this. And then like, okay, well, how am I gonna reverse and engineer this?
Yeah.
And it was just smart. And I think that's when you're writing, the ideas of have to do come up. But then if you have enough
Mhm.
time, you can game it out. Like you should find a. I mean, this is my thing about
You
continuity
need a good
questions.
reason, but
Well,
yeah.
also, this is my thing about continuity stuff. When people get weird about like, oh, is this book? When you're taking on a book and you go back and look through the character's continuity and you go, oh, there's some things that are kind of messy. Jeff is really good at this. Where Jeff was like, I'm gonna take that mess and make it into a whole fucking story.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
uh, I remember having dinner with Jeff one time when he was working on the lead in. I think I was having lunch with him. I think and the lead in to Infinite Crisis, and we were talking about Power Girl, and it was like, "How are you gonna do that? Like, how are you gonna make that story work?" And he was like, I'm just gonna do the thing. The
Yeah.
thing is the thing." He was like, "No, she's from Earth 2, and Earth 2 was destroyed, and she remembers, and Psycho Pirate's there, and he remembers." And I remember being like, "That's so crazy." Yeah, he's just doing it. Like, he's
Yeah.
just taking, and that was the thing that I started like thinking about, and that's part of why I do the way I do it, where I'm like, "No, the thing that happened, and you just move on from there."
Yep.
Like, yeah, the characters are aware at this point that reality has rewritten itself a few times. So it's like you just go from there and you move forward with it. But yeah, that's interesting. The have to is, dude, it can be tough. If you're in the room and you're pitching something and you don't have, part of the trick to that is, if you're in the room, you could do that. You say these words, we could do this.
Right.
Because if you say this is what we're doing, and then you don't have the answers, you have to approach it like, I mean, I try to go in this stuff being like, I don't know everything. I don't have every answer. This is why I'm pitching it because I want your help. I
Yeah.
want your tell me what I'm missing. What's not working here? And you that's the part of like the collaboration with your editor, with other creators, with the company as a whole. And you go in front of a room full of people and you go, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? And then somebody can be like, what about this? And you're like, I can do this, you
Right.
know? That's the stuff that's always really like really interesting to do. Like to be able to share those ideas and sort of build stuff with your team. You know, it's like I talk to there's stuff coming up in Superman, like, I'll just call Mark Waid and be like, "What do you think about this?"
Yeah.
You know? "What do you" well, because he knows the history so well, so I'll call and be like, "Hey, has anyone ever done this?" And he's like, "Oh, that's interesting, no." And I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah.
Yes. You know, because like, he
Yeah.
is, like, institutional
He knows the
knowledge.
history to the point where he's writing a new history for the
He's
DC
writing
universe.
Universe. Yeah, it's awesome too, like, issue 1 is out pretty soon, it's great. It's this month, it's June?
Yeah.
I think June, yeah, it's awesome. It's
Nice.
like it's really it's really good, it's fascinating, dude. That guy Mark is putting himself through the ringer with that one. I mean, he really is doing the work. He's
Yeah.
really doing the work to be like, how do I make this make sense and I'll make it all pull this all together into a cohesive story, and it is awesome. Like he's really doing a great job with it, dude, and it
That's
looks
great.
hot. Yeah, it's really good.
But the most important thing we could talk about today, and I think it's time we got to it, is bags and boards. You said
I
you
know.
wanted to talk about bags and
Because so listen, so everyone watching, I know sometimes Sal and I go on all these mini tangents, and I'm trying to keep things focused, but it's impossible because
yeah,
you're basically watching two friends talk about comics. So
which
it's
I
like,
think is the point of the show. I mean, like people,
yeah, it's not
we'll
like,
and we get some FOCs in there too. But
yeah, I don't
yeah,
always want to be like selling my stuff every time.
yeah, which is available in trade right now, and you can pick it up at your local comic book store. Definitely check it out. GI Joe. Also, beautiful new hardcover editions. Or are
I
they
know
hardcovers?
they're hardcovers. I haven't even got my copy yet, the hardcover,
Oh,
but I want to. Yeah, of Duke and Destro. Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna have some fun GI Joe stuff coming soon as well. But so we've talked about Superman. We've talked 28. Yes, before this started, I did want to. Sal and I were talking, and bags and boards came up in the conversation, and I was like, "Dude, we gotta talk about bags and boards," because
yeah,
you would say a thing that I was like, "Oh, wait, save it, don't like."
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, do you when you go to your comic book store,
Yes.
when you go to your comic book store, do you want the comics on the rack to be bag and boarded or completely open and free?
Completely open and free. There's
Yeah.
no excuse. The only reason to put your books week to week on the shelf in bags and boards is to prevent people from looking at them.
So here's my solution to this because I understand it's tough. It's tough. So yeah, when I was a kid, there was one of the comic book stores I eventually ended up working at. They would bag and board everything as it
Yeah.
was coming, and so everything was bag and board, not sealed, not sealed.
No, no,
So
no. So you can pick them out. Yeah.
you pick
But
them
like
out,
that
but
will damage the book too. And
that
it's
there's
like,
well too. And I remember, dude. I mean, when I worked at the store in college, I mean, we definitely had customers who came in who were like, I mean, they would take the stack
yeah.
and they would put it on the bins and they would stare at the spines and try to find the spine that the least wear,
Oh
and
my
then
God.
slide that one out and then put it in a bag and board. I mean, there were times we would have them come to us with the stack and be like, "None of these are good enough. Do you have any other copies?" And I'd be like, "No, dude, that's it. That is
Wow.
that we have," because they were so like, I need a 9, I need a 10,
Pristine.
I need
Yeah.
help. So I actually think the solution to that is maybe to you bag and board like a
Pre-orders.
quarter no, well, pre-orders, yes, you should. But I think if you do it on the shelf is you do like a quarter of what's on the shelf. So if you have 10 books, do 2 or a bag of board, maybe 3, and you put them in the back. So if you
Yeah.
those customers who are like, I don't want people to touch my books.
Right.
Have you ever seen that? Like you're at the comic book store and somebody goes to the rack and they look at the rack and they like pull down the first 5 books and they grab the 6th one?
I may
But
be that person.
see?
But only if it's kind of rough and I have the option. Obviously, like I'm not the kind of person who's like, well, there's a hot book. Let me take the first 5. I am
Oh,
the kind of
dude.
person who's like, I get one for me and that's it. But like,
Yeah,
if it matters to me or if I know I'm like, this is a hot book, I
yeah.
should probably be careful with this. I will go too deep and if I can and grab a little nicer version.
Grab this one.
But I feel like that's my it's not like it's first come first serve. If somebody wants to go in the like to leaf through the
Yeah, yeah.
back, that's their
That's
prerogative.
their business. Yeah, I think it's funny, that's all, like, I've
Yeah,
seen
but
it.
I definitely do that.
That's so funny. I haven't bag and boarded a comic in years. I
Really?
feel like at some point, once I get my storage situation in my office all cleared out, at some point, I will go and do a thing where it's like, "Okay, these are the books that are mine on my bag and board that I worked on. And then here are some, if it's something that's signed,
Oh
those are
yeah.
I can board it, but it's been a while since I've had like a single issue signed. I mean, most stuff I do, if I ever get a book signed now, it's a hardcover or something like that. But even then, it's rare because if I know the person, I don't want to be like, that's a whole other weird
We've
thing.
been
I
there.
feel
We've been
like
there because
I
yes, I
talk
brought my rogues to you, and you were like, "What are you
I was like,
doing?"
"What are you doing?" Yeah,
The
no,
funny
it's
thing is,
like,
I was telling that to Tom, and he was like, "He should sign your book."
I did I sign it though?
You did.
I
No,
did
no,
sign
but yeah, but you were like, "I don't want
Trump
to do that,
gave
man.
me
Come on,
I'll
we're
show
friends." I'm
I'll
like,
I'll give Tom a hard time about
"Yeah,
something.
please do."
So much to give Tom a hard time about.
It's true.
Um, uh, I mean, that's the thing, like, I feel like not to keep bringing it back up here, David, but I was
No,
like
yeah,
I only met him, like, maybe 2 or 3 times,
same.
and I wish I had actually spent more time talking to him at all just to kind of it's funny because it's like, I don't wanna go to this person at a table, minding their own business, and just spiel, and be like, I do this because of this and stuff. I
Yeah,
mean, it's funny. There was one creator for a long time was infamous for if you went to their table and you said, like, I love your work. Your work has inspired me. It's amazing. It was not Peter David, by the way. I'm
sure.
clarifying that. The other person. You would go to them and you'd be like, I love your work. It's amazing, inspiring, blah, blah. And they go, if you love it so much, why aren't you buying something off the table? Like that was literally a line for a long time
I had
with
that experience with a creator who probably isn't the same person you're talking about, but
oh, isn't that crazy? It's
yeah,
such a weird, like,
almost word for word. It was very. yeah, I did the same thing. I was like, "This is a
you're gonna have to
great.
tell me when
I will.
recording.
I love your work. I've loved it for a long time." And he's like, "Yeah, well, what have you done for me lately?" That kind of attitude.
oh,
And I was
dude,
like,
yeah, I had a creator one time at a party. I went up to them and I was like, I was introduced to them. I didn't realize it was them, and they got introduced, and I was like, oh man, I love your work, and they were like so mad. They were so mad. You could tell they were so upset about it. They were just like, ugh, like it bothered them. Like a nerd likes my work. You know what I
"What a
mean? It was like
pain."
that level of like that's a whole other weird thing where it's like I think the judgment of our audience sometimes like that.
Hmm.
It's just like he was so bothered that I wasn't like some cool kid or some shit. Like I was just this nerdy dude. I mean, I'm at the party wouldn't be like, brother, I'm at the same party as you.
Exactly.
Like, let's
Yeah,
just like both
I'm
got
not a plus
invited to the
one,
same
man.
party. Yeah,
Exactly.
let's not get too crazy here.
Yeah.
But with Peter David, like I wish I had spent a little bit more time with him at conventions talking to him. I hear all these other creators who would like run into him and stuff and have these like really amazing conversations. And I'm like, oh, I really miss that.
Can I tell you the last time I saw Peter David was at a New York Comic Con. It might have been the last one that he ever did. In fact, it was, but I wonder if it was the last convention he ever did. But he was at a table, and what is so frustrating about some of the titans of the industry is how available they are at Comic Con.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
walk right up to them, and they're just like there. Like I have struck up a conversation with Arthur Adams. I have nothing to say to Arthur Adams outside of I fucking love your work,
yeah. What
and
do
I've
you
done
think? Yeah, it's weird.
and
Like
I've done it like 3 or 4 times. I bought stuff as well, but I'm like,
you're like long shot, yeah. Like you're conversation.
yeah, I'm a huge long shot.
Anyway, yeah.
But I went up to Peter David, and I never got him on this show. I really really wanted to, but I didn't want to bug him, and
That's it. You don't want to bug them.
I don't want to bug
That's
him. But I
you
went up
don't.
to him, and I was like, Mr. David, I just want to let you know, like, I'm a big fan. I run this show. I've been wanting to talk to you. You're such an inspiration. Blah blah blah. And clearly, I was just talking too long. And he took a minute, and he just went, "But I digress."
That's so funny. That is such a Peter David.
And I was like, but I'd love to invite you on my podcast. It's like, there it is. Yes, of course. Here's my email address. Give me a call. And I was like,
Uh,
thank you so much. And yeah, that
that's
was,
so funny. Yeah, the him and Keith Giffen were two that like I had talked to Keith Giffen a
oh,
couple of
Giffen
times,
was great.
but I
Yeah.
wish I like, had spent more time with him. It's like I know Tom got to talk to him a lot. I didn't get to do as much
Really?
talking, but yeah, there's a few. Well, because Tom like we've had this
Yeah.
conversation before. Tom King is very influenced by Keith Giffen. If you look at 5 Year Later Legion, it's funny if you look at a Mega Man and then you look at 5 Year Later Legion, you're gonna be like, holy shit, like And it was funny when Tom was doing a lot of his books, he was doing all these, like, 9-panel grids, which he still does, but he was very 9-panel gridish, but it was funny because he and I talked about this. It was one of our first, like, friendly conversations. We'd only met a couple times briefly, but he and I were at a con together, at an ALA, which is not really, like it's a convention, but isn't, like,
Yeah. The library thing. Yeah.
very different. It's a very different vibe. It's a small group of us. We're the only comic people there. It's all librarians and novelists and books and a lot of YA stuff, but it's a small group of creators, which is great. It was a lot of fun. It was like me, him, Rucka, Ben Percy, and Venditti.
Nice.
I feel really bad if I'm forgetting somebody, but I think it was just us, and it was a great trip. Like, we had so much fun, just us just hanging out, having dinner every night, talking about comics.
Yeah.
But we're talking to Tom, and I was like, it's funny. Like, I hear this, and people think you're ripping off Alan Moore, but you're not. Like, you're ripping off Keith Giffen." And he was like, he stopped. He was like, "That is it. That is it." I was like, "Yes, that's exactly it." So anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny with that. You don't want to like walk over. Yeah, I think the last time I had a conversation with Peter David, man, it might have been 2013, 14. It was a long time ago. God, it might have been earlier than that, like, maybe 12, like, 2012, maybe even. What had happened was, I love X Factor 87, like, it's an important comic to me, and I was in, I always try to find a page of it. I wanna find that cover. That's, like, the one of the big
Oh,
things
it's a
I
great cover.
cover. I've been hunting it for years, and I never been able to find it. Um, I've heard from some collectors that, like, if you ask the right people, they probably know where it is.
I was gonna say, like, you probably know Casada at this point.
Yeah, dude, I've only talked to Quesada maybe 3 times in my life.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, I've only talked to him
Interesting.
maybe 3 times.
I
I
guess
mean,
it
they've
makes sense.
had, like,
Yeah, that's not
full
you
on
guys didn't have the same circles, so
No, and
yeah.
by the time I was even doing Marvel stuff, that was when Axel was there, like, by the time I did any Marvel work. I mean, I definitely it's funny, I talked to Joe Quesada when Marvel Knights was starting, and then
That's
I
awesome.
talked to him again when he was, like, editor-in-chief of Marvel, big deal guy, like, I talked to him then. But then the next time I talked to him, like an actual conversation, not a "Hi, how are you?" Blah, 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 kinda thing, an actual conversation was when he announced Amazing Comics. Like, so that's like the weird, like thing there. But anyways, I was at New York Comic Con. I'm always trying to find these things, and so basically when I go, I look for Joe Quesada, like, stuff. You find these, you find those bins that say Joe Quesada on them, those
Yep.
folders, going through and all this amazing art. And then I see a page of X-Factor 87, and it was like $100. And I was like, and this is when I was broke too. So, but I was like, that's how long ago this must have been. So it's like, I was like, hell yeah, I'm getting this. And I got it. And then I immediately made a beeline for Peter David to have him sign it, and walked over. And he was the one that noticed that a bunch of the word balloons had fallen off or missing and stuff. And I was like, which explained why it was cheaper, but I was like, it still worked. I didn't say it to him, but I was like, the scene still works. But it was great. He got to sign that, and I talked to him. So that's how long ago it was since I actually spoke to him. But yeah, I have that page over here. It's a friend. The funny thing was trying to get that home. It was the first time I bought a page at New York Comic Con, and I was like, I have no idea how I'm getting this. I'm gonna take this on the plane. How am I doing this? And I ended up mailing it back. But yeah, so bags and boards, bringing it back to bags and boards.
Right, right, yes, yes.
I yeah, I worked at a store briefly. They would do that where they had put everything in it, and it just creates like a weird extra barrier step between you and the book. Like, you just want people to get their hands on that book, and you want them to look at it and read it and go, "I want to buy this."
Yes.
You, you don't want. It's funny how I understand, like, you don't want a customer to come into your store and like camp out for an hour and just read every book and then leave. Like, that sucks.
Yeah.
But you also know those customers. You know the ones that are gonna do that, and you can kind of nip that in the bud, friend in a
Yeah.
friendly way. But you don't wanna, like, assume that about every single person that walks in. It's like you can warn somebody, but I think that's what sucks if you don't if you're creating barriers between people and the books.
Ugh.
So, yeah, I'm anti-bags and board, but do you still bags and board stuff now?
Yeah. Yeah.
You do bag and board everything? Like, when it's
Yep.
coming, you go to the store, you buy it, you bag and board it?
I do.
Oh my
I do.
gosh, you if you ever come to Portland and you come to my office, you're gonna think I'm a crazy person.
No, no, I mean, like, honestly, like, I am making up for lost time. As a kid, and it's funny, I have a table of proof of it now. As a kid, I was so unprecious about comic books, and I read
Uh,
them like it was like it was the '40s. Like,
yeah.
yeah, I didn't bend the spines. I knew enough not to bend the spine, but I did.
Oh, man.
But like I read them to destruction. Like,
Yeah.
I found a box. I may have texted you a picture of it. Like, just
Oh,
I found a
yeah, yeah.
like just the stack of books that I that I didn't put in long boxes and bring to the studio that I found in my parents' attic. And there's an inordinate amount of books where the covers are gone because of how red they are.
That was so my thing was I was a big we talked about before, like, I got a lot of comics through Costco and stuff like that, but I was a big subscription kid. Like, they came in the mail, and
That's
they would
awesome. Oh,
destroy them.
wrecked. Oh yeah.
They would take the comic, and they would put it in, like, the thinnest possible thing, no board, nothing, and then they would roll that shit up and put it in your mailbox. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
they would shove it in the
Let me
mailbox
tell you
and stuff.
something. I was a subscriber of Marvel recently, like within the last 5 or 6 years,
Oh, right, yeah, okay, yeah.
and they were still poorly mailed.
Oh my god, it's so funny.
Like, they were
Well,
just, like, bent. I'm like, "Come on!"
dude, I was a big, this, I was a big 2099 kid, like, and so I had subscriptions to all those books, except for Ravage. Poor Ra
That's fair. Yeah, Ravage you can
Yeah,
skip.
it's the one I never read. I don't think I think I read a little bit of it, but I never, like, dived in. Like, I was
Nah,
actually
it's
debating on doing a Doom 2099 reread recently just because it's now on Unlimited, so
yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, I might actually sit down and read it." I read it when it was coming out.
Yeah.
I don't read it since.
You might know this story. Do you know that Ravage was almost Carnage?
What?
The
I
plan
thought you were
was
gonna tell me the other thing that it was supposed to be Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. They were
yeah.
gonna do it together. Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
okay.
no,
I didn't
yeah,
tell me
that
that. I
I
think
think
that's
Stan still wrote the first issue at least,
he
but,
did. No, he did, but it was supposed to be Ditko was supposed to draw it. Yeah,
what
I
a
think that's
shame.
public knowledge. Yeah.
But
Or they
yeah, no,
wanted him to. I'm not saying if I don't think I should say he was supposed to. I think they wanted him to.
yeah.
Anyway.
When they were developing Carnage, the plan was Ravage,
Oh, his
and
name,
his
like the name.
name was Ravage, and they said, "We can't stand doing a book called Ravage right now."
Oh my god, and they
So
decided
then so then
Ridge.
they went with Chaos, and they were like, "We can't. There's either a character or we're too busy. Or Lady Death was huge at the time, so we can't do
Yeah,
Chaos."
Chaos Comics.
And so the Carnage is the third choice,
And it's such a great name.
and it's a
It's
perfect name.
Isn't there a symbiote named Chaos though? Didn't they
Oh yeah,
eventually?
yeah.
Yeah,
They
okay.
eventually got
Alright, I
Chaos.
was like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the thing. I mean, I don't know all the names of all of
Oh,
them
like
now.
Lasher and
Yeah.
Phage,
There's so many. It's so crazy to think how many of there are now. And it's
and how
funny.
many
I
appeared in the movies? Like they're
see. I haven't seen. Dude, I saw the first movie.
yep.
And I was like, "This is fun, this is bonkers." Like, you go into it, if you go into it with a certain mindset. I
Yeah.
have not seen the second one. I have not
Mm.
seen the Let There Be Carnage, which I wanna see because it's Carnage, I wanna see it. And then I that's the thing with some of this stuff is, it's like, I know if people don't like it or they do love it or whatever, it's like, you just wanna see how they do it sometimes. You wanna
Yeah.
see, like, what is the thing and, like, how do they pull this whole thing together? So I haven't seen 2 or 3 yet. I think at some point also, I say these things, I'm like, "I'm gonna have a Venom marathon." No.
Yeah.
Like, who has the time for that?
The problem is, like, with Venom, the Venom trilogy is that they're almost the same movie 3 times in a row. Like, the 3rd one
Oh,
like,
really?
by the 3rd movie I saw this recently for another show. I vowed I wouldn't watch any more of them after the first one, but I keep ending up seeing them. But, the 3rd one, I'm like, at some point or another, Eddie has to stop being surprised by crazy shit happening to him. And like by the 3rd movie, it's inexcusable that he's like, I can't believe we just fell from that thing, and then the thing happened to the thing. And Venom's like, yeah, that's right, buddy. And I'm like, this, like, that's the 3rd fucking movie, man.
You
It's
just wanted
like,
some growth. Like, you wanted the trilogy adventure of,
well,
like, Luke
everybody,
Skywalker. Like, you want
everybody who,
by the time we got to Return of the Jedi, Luke was doing fucking jumps in the
yeah,
air, grabbing
he's doing
lightsabers
jumps. He's
midair.
choking out Pigmen. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, yeah.
But
You wanted a little bit of the journey of, like, by the time you do the 3rd movie, Eddie is like, "I actually know how to use this now."
no,
Like,
and
"Oh,
like what?
let me be the one to do something crazy and jump out of a plane or whatever." Yeah.
Please, or at the very least, get the spider on your chest. Never
Does he
happens.
never have the spider on the chest?
Never,
That's
never.
crazy.
And then
That's gotta be some I have no idea. No
the
idea.
3rd movie, they
Feel like
introduced Null.
No, I know. I know
So
all
they
that.
could have been like, "Oh, it's a dragon." Like, they could have done something. They didn't do anything.
I wonder if that's a weird thing about I'm
Yeah.
just speculating here, if it's a thing. If it's
Yeah, it
like,
could be
I
a
can't
thing.
use the Spider-Man logo for these reasons or whatever, like, that could be it
Yeah.
'cause he doesn't know Spider-Man, so we're like,
Yeah.
don't that's the thing that's funny, like, we talk about that reverse engineering of things where it's like, what we will I don't know what the inner workings of those plans were and how we didn't get a Spider-Man versus, Venom
Venom.
movie ever, it's like,
Yeah.
how they take place in 2 different universes or whatever,
Yep. Yep. They're 2
you
different
know?
universes.
So it's
Uh,
like
you will be surprised in Let There Be Carnage. It is the most watchable, but it also is. I thought it was the loudest movie I've ever seen. Like, for some reason, it's just really loud. Like, there's just a lot of like noise.
that's
Also,
interesting.
but
Who's in
uh,
it?
Shriek.
Shriek's in it. Shriek's a cool design.
Shriek is a great design.
I have
I
the
remember.
I have that Shriek toy over here.
Me too. Oh yeah, I remember when Shriek was first introduced. Like, she was just dropped on us in Unlimited #1, and I'm like, am I supposed to know who this is? Like, I remember just that was
Dude,
what
I
they were
had the
doing
same
back
thing
then.
because that dude, it's so funny because when you're a kid, whenever a character appears, because
You
you're in
assume.
that point to assume they've been around since the '60s.
Exactly.
Like, all of them. Every time a character appeared, and they were just like if you were reading a random Marvel comic in 1993,
Yeah.
and a character showed up, and another character knew who they were, you were just like, "Yep, that character's been around for, like, 30 years."
That's
Like,
right, that's right.
you did not assume anyone was new. You were like,
Unless they were on
"Everybody
the
is new."
cover with an arrow pointing at them, they've been
Same
around.
brand new character, or it was an initiative with the annuals, and they came with a collectible card.
Right.
You know, it's like, "Oh, those are new characters, that's a new person." You
Yeah.
know, feel like, when Maggot showed up, I knew Maggot was new.
Yeah, same with,
At that point,
Marrow.
I was in it,
Yeah, I'm like, "Oh,
So
I know
you're
who this is." Yeah.
reading it's funny how that was like that. Yeah, when Shrek showed up, you're just like or Shriek showed up, you're like, "Oh, so she must have been around?
She's
Like,
in the
she must be."
Ravencroft Institute. Like, we got Carnage in one room, we got Shriek on the other. I'm like, "Oh, well, what is she Shriek get introduced to?" This
And at that
one,
point, you're talking about that was the 5th, not counting
Spider-Man
Mini, that
title?
was
Yeah,
5th Spider-Man title.
yeah.
So you're just like, "Maybe she appeared in Spectacular, I missed
Must have
it.
been a web of.
Maybe she was in Web." Yeah, yeah, like, maybe she was but at that point, what was funny to me in that weird window, the book that I actually was reading less of right when that started was actually Spider-Man. I was reading Amazing, I was reading Web, I was reading Spectacular, but Spider-Man was the one that I actually don't remember as well in that exact moment, in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
and then after Maximum Carnage, you're just here's the thing about people not liking events. Events are funny because events will trick you into reading everything.
That's right, that's right, it worked. 14 parts, every single Spider title.
And
Yeah,
then you read all the Spider-Man titles afterward.
that's right, you keep going because they didn't
I
maybe they
read
introduced something.
Yeah, I read all of it, but before we wrap up here,
Yeah.
I do wanna talk about something you and I spoke about briefly.
Yes, yes, yes.
We can talk about, Alien Avengers.
Yeah, it ended. It's,
It ended. Yeah, so what'd you think of the ending?
I mean,
I wish it was an ongoing.
yeah,
It
I'm not surprised by its ending. Like, I mean, when Hickman introduced the Prometheus stuff with the engineers and everything, I was like, "Oh, we're doing this, okay." And I was a little disappointed in as much as it felt like it was just Hickman exercising some of his latent X-Men stuff that he didn't get a
I can see
chance to
that
get out of the system,
and some of the Black Panther stuff. Like, I mean,
and his
I think
Black
the
Panther
fact that
stuff. Yeah,
very like, the beginning part was him explaining certain things, which I was glad he did. I was glad
yeah,
he did, and I think the payoff was good.
yeah.
My only complaint was that it's like, I wish that there was more.
There's more. Yeah,
That's it. That's it. I mean, I really like what he did. I'm a big fan of Hickman's, and I feel like his use of economy, like his speed in terms of pages, the ability to have very minimal dialogue. Like, it's
yeah,
fun. They'll have pages that are a lot of dialogue, and then pages that are very minimal, but those pages have such they hit so
yeah,
hard, And so it's like I always find he's a writer where like halfway through the issue, you always stop and kind of go, okay, I gotta re-look at this. Like, how many pages did he do? How many panels?
yeah,
How did he get here? How was he able to very minimally get where we're at? And I thought
yeah.
that was really some of that book. And we're gonna get into spoilers here as we
Yes, yes.
talk about. Okay, so anyone who hasn't read it yet, we're just gonna full on talk spoilers. Um, I always like Mr. Sinister as a villain. I think he's interesting.
He's a great villain. Yep.
I find it funny because I'm not like that caught up on X-Men over the last like 20 years. I feel like I do know stuff, but it's still weird to me that there's just like multiple Sinisters at times.
Yeah.
I know that's like a big thing. I do understand it. I wish that when he came out, I wish he wasn't red. I wish he'd been totally white with the red. Like, I wish they
Yes.
had black or something like that. Like, I think they did big black, but I think
They did
because
a
of
white alien. They did a
monster.
white alien and something else, and I can imagine them going, "Oh, we don't want to get confused, so it has to be something very specific."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like all the stuff though. I thought it was interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
it was funny. Like the one Sinister is like excited about becoming an alien, and then the other aliens start killing all the Sinisters, and I'm like, it's such a funny. I love that trope. I love the trope of like a villain being like, well, the other villains aren't gonna kill me, right?
The
Like,
lepers won't eat my face. Yeah.
the monster I created is not gonna hurt me, right? They love me.
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
fine. And it's
That is
like, oh no, you're
that's not
not.
just great, but it's also a good alien trope. Like, it's in some of the
Oh
worst
yeah,
alien
oh yeah.
movies, but also it works.
I created this alien, or I'm gonna unleash the monster, and they're gonna fucking, they're gonna somehow worship me, or they're a newborn baby, and they're gonna think I'm the mommy, or they're gonna be like, oh, you're my creator, you will worship me because I like it's interesting because it always comes from a place of ego for those characters.
Right.
But Sinister is like walking ego. So the fact that he was like, "I'll be fine," and then they started killing, killing all the
Yeah, and he's like,
Sinisters.
"Oh," I think one of them says something like, "I didn't see this coming," and I'm like, "That's so great."
Oh,
Um,
dude, yeah. I liked they did a good job. I always love these things where it's like I mean, I really was like, "Oh, they're not gonna get out of this one."
yeah.
Because it was like once he had Nightcrawler's powers, I was like, "Oh, they're." I definitely felt like emotionally connected to that book because it was like you didn't. I was really curious. I'm like, "How are they gonna end this? Is it just end with everyone dying?" You know?
Yeah.
And then it's like the moment he started teleporting around, I was like, "Oh, they're
Oh.
fucked.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
fucked."
No,
And then he
when Wolverine
teleported
like, "I'm gonna figure
armor.
it out," I'm like, "Oh, you're gonna get about to get aliened." Like, he's
Yes,
gonna
when they were
alien
saying,
into you.
I love when he was like, "Armor's gonna be fine, White Queen will be fine, I'll be fine, I'll figure it out." I was like, "Oh, dude,
"Oh, you're all dead."
I was like, "The only person making out of this alive is Black Panther."
Yep.
Like, everyone else is gonna be gone. It's just not gonna work. I feel bad for Armor, but I was like, "No one's gonna make out of this alive," and then it was like but it is that sort of like, when you watch, Angel, the show Angel at the very ending when,
Mm.
they're like the war is starting and he's holding the sword and he's like, "I'm gonna get the dragon," and then it cuts to black and they never fucking I think the comics followed up on it, but they just were like, it's like
Yeah.
that. I thought it was gonna end like that. I thought it was gonna end with them being like, "We're landing on the planet where the engineers are and we're just gonna kill them or whatever." Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I thought they were gonna like do something of that level of like the ending is them rushing into battle, whatever, which they kind of did because that's the whole thing. They're gonna go find the engineers and stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I do. It's funny because I have experience with that side of things because of working in the Predator comic like 10 years
Right.
ago. It was that 10 years ago? Oh my god! So working in that Predator comic was more than 10 years.
Yeah.
But because I did that Predator comic way back when,
That was the Fire and Stone event, right?
yeah, Fire and Stone. We dealt with like Prometheus and
Prometheus and
all
yeah.
that stuff. So it's like I'm familiar with like the complication of that story, but also the hoops you have to jump through. It's like you just have to. They're very protective of that story, which I understand. It's always weird when you're. It's funny because I get this. It's like when you're working in comics in general, you're always we've had this conversation over. You're babysitting somebody else's kid, you
Yeah.
know, but you're babysitting like a company's kid.
Yeah.
It's interesting when the person who created that kid is involved
Sure.
because that adds a whole other element to stuff. And so it's like, and you have to respect that too, where it's like, that's what's always funny. Like even doing crossovers or doing any kind of, picking up pieces from somebody else, if they're still involved, you're very like, I understand this is still yours.
Yeah.
Like I'm a part of this thing that's still yours and you're not done. The funny thing about it is that like, you are not done with that story. So, for example, like if Stan Lee had been like at some point in the 90s had been like, actually, if you go back and read those early issues of Spider-Man, I was building to this story and I want to finish that story.
Yeah.
It's like it's interesting of like, okay, we'll do that story for you, right? But then the problem is that it's like, well, what if I can't tell that story now because of so much has happened? Right? Which I mean, I actually don't know about that with some of these books. It's funny, like getting the opportunity to come back around and do an ending the way you want to do it. But even then, it's like I read a couple weeks ago after Peter David died. I was, you're just in that zone. You start looking at stuff. I hadn't read Hulk the End since it came out.
Oh, yeah. No, I read that recently. Yeah.
Yeah, so I read it, and it still ends with like ambiguous sort of like the Hulk will go on ending,
Yeah.
right? Like it doesn't even say for sure this is the end, but it's like because stories can never end in a way, like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a comic where the character like I want that's something we can maybe we'll end on that. Okay, so
Yeah.
here's my people in the comments. What is the best ending of all time for comics?
Mm.
What is the best? I would argue Preacher is great. I would
Yep.
argue Hitman is great, and I would argue Starman is great. All three have something in common, and is literally like a preacher, literally riding off in the sunset on a horse.
Yep.
Starman driving off into the sunset, going to San Francisco. I think it's San Francisco. Um, and then Tommy, they're like just walking into nothingness. Like they're
Yeah.
walking into the doors of heaven or whatever. Like the white, it's like uh I think those are real endings, and I think that's one of the struggles we have in comics sometimes is it's really hard to do an ending. I think people I think it's sometimes what becomes a frustration among creators, fans, everything is the idea that like we're constantly living in the second act.
Yep.
You're always doing every ending is kind of a soft ending.
Mhm. It's
What
your
is
ending.
the what's that?
It's your ending. It's not the ending.
Yeah, at the end for that character. But create your own, you can definitely do endings and create your own spaces and stuff
Oh
like that.
yeah.
You think there are books where it's like, okay, so here's an example that's really interesting to me is Jeff Johns and Howard Porter when they did Flash 225. That was a really great ending that felt like an ending to not only what was being built by Jeff, but had been built by Mark. So it
Right.
was like that felt like an ending. Like if you had read Return of Barry Allen, like you read Flash, Return of Barry Allen straight through, you read Mark, you read the stuff that Grant did, you read everything through. It felt like an ending to Wally's story, which is
Mm,
why I think sometimes it created some of the problems that we had afterwards in terms of like getting a Flash book up and going that eventually led to Barry coming back.
yeah.
Um, but it's like I'm curious about in superhero books, create your own books, whatever, image, whatever, even stuff like what we're talking about. If you're like, there was an alien book one time that I felt like had an ending. Um,
Yeah.
I would be really curious of what that is. Like, you could mention Lock and Key. I think Lock and Key has a great ending. Bone has a great ending.
Yeah.
But I would be curious. I think the challenge here is like superhero books. I mean, if you look
Mhm.
at Punisher Max, I think Punisher Max had a good ending. But yeah. Oh, you laugh. Oh, okay. Yeah. So we're gonna talk this next time.
The
This will be a
strange,
conversation.
it's Doctor Strangelove. Yeah, that was fun.
No, but that's it though. I'm curious what people think, and it's like what qualifies as an ending because when you look at Bendis, do you think Ultimate Spider-Man ends when Peter dies, even though
Right.
it's a Miles book right after that? So is that an
Yeah.
ending to you? Like that's something I would be really curious about. And it's funny because there's somebody that comes up picks up that baton the next month. And so I do you see those things as endings or not? I would be really curious. If anybody in the comments, let us know what you think. So ask whatever questions you want to ask, but
Yeah.
what are some endings in comics that you thought were like that you love, that you thought worked, you thought landed,
Yeah.
doesn't have to be successful or a high seller. I just want to know your personal opinion. Like, what do you
Yeah.
think? One before we go,
Yeah.
what's give an example before we go?
I mean, it's there. I have a personal Spider-Man ending that I think is almost perfect. Um, but where I'm like, if I when I'm done like with life, my last Spider-Man comic will be that one
Oh,
because it ends like it's just a good. It's an ending where it's like sunset, like they'll never end, that kind of thing.
yeah, and
Um,
that's also part of the math too. Is like the story never ends. I mean,
exactly.
you look at whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow.
Oh
It's
yeah, yeah,
but it's weird because it's like that was wrapping up that chapter, that universe, that character, that version. It's such an
yeah,
interesting like it's really fascinating the math of an ending, especially when it comes to superhero books. I think
yeah.
it can be
Um,
tough. Yeah.
I think I made a joke about it in my episode about it, but like Spawn 100 really is a good like it's over. I mean, it'll never be over, but like it's over.
I think
Like
that was the last issue I read. I
that
might have
definitely was
like
my last issue as well.
I think I read a little after that. I think I was still getting it after that, but I think 100 was the one that I remember being like, "Oh yeah, that's the end of this story," kind of
That's
thing.
over. Yeah, that's the end of what Todd was doing from issue 1, and now it's Spawn is something else. Like
I
it's
haven't read it in
something
a
else.
long time. I picked up some stuff here and there, like when Eric Larson was doing it. Like I read that because I was just like, I want to see what this looks
Crazy.
like.
Yeah.
He would
Big time.
like was he was being inked by Todd, so it was like, oh man, I gotta check this out,
Yeah.
And there's definitely been stuff over time that you're like, I just want to look at. Cause Spawn, they've always been able to make that book like really visually interesting, so it's always
Yeah.
like I know what that book looks like.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah,
Oh,
but yeah,
and
but
this is sacrilege. This is very interesting. At least I think it is. Um, I was a big Maxx fan. I liked Sam Keith's The Maxx. That was a
oh
big
yeah,
that
yeah,
was a big
yeah.
indie book for me. That was like one of the first indie books I ever bought. Was
Mhm,
The Maxx. I was so
mhm,
intrigued by it, and it was such a great trick where it was like, oh, the superhero book. Oh, nope, not even a little bit. And
yeah, right for a little bit.
but and I think that like it took like 10 years for 34 issues to come out, but like or something like that. Like it's under 50, and maybe even not even quite 30, but and it goes it goes in odd directions that I do not agree with. The cartoon ends the book better.
That is interesting.
Like the cartoon, by the way, is like almost a one-to-one
Oh, I know.
adaptation.
I
Like,
remember when the cartoon was airing, I was shocked.
huh, it was
I remember at the time being like, "Why are they doing this all the comics? This should be all
that's
the comics.
that's exactly my opinion. And I was
This
like,
should be all of this." Like, I don't
yeah,
understand.
and you hear Keith talk about it where he was like the people who were developing the show were just like, we could do like he's like, you could go wherever you want. And he's like, and they're like, we're just gonna take the pages and we're gonna make them happen. And he's like, why?
'Cause it was beautiful and it was awesome.
Yeah. And it's
There's
like,
also a moment you got Liquid Television on MTV, like, they were
oh,
going for it and doing stuff, yeah.
they were trying to, but yeah, yeah. That
So,
ending, the cartoon is better.
is better. That's funny. Yeah, we'll talk about ending next time.
Yeah, we'll talk about
We'll
it
say this
later.
to you before we go because we'll talk about this later, next time, but I saw that
Yep.
they're doing, a sequel to Spider-Man 94, Marvel is.
Yes.
So I'm curious about that. I just saw it, like, in passing yesterday, so I haven't actually read or looked into it and stuff like that,
Yeah,
but I'm really
it's
curious to check that out.
DeMatteis. It's James
I know, I
DeMatteis
saw that.
writing it,
I was
and,
really surprised.
yeah,
Yeah,
and Isaiah
yeah.
and John Kemper has no involvement. It's just
I know, I saw that too. That
yeah.
was actually how I found about the other.
You saw that and then went, "Wait, what?"
I saw that and I was like, "What's going on?"
Yeah.
Uh, but I was like, "That's
That's a good
cool."
ending.
Yeah, well, that I mean, well, we gotta stop here, otherwise we're gonna start talking about Spider-Man Beyond if we also,
Okay.
dude, it's funny, I have the Spider-Man Beyond toy over here,
Oh,
and I'm
yeah.
staring at it one day. I haven't taken out the box, staring at it one day, and I remember being like, "Why did I get this? Why did I get this? Why didn't they just do Spider-Man 2099 again?" Anyway, that's a whole other
Yes.
thing. Well,
Yes.
yeah, we should stop here
Yep.
but yeah, people put, Superman 28, please pre-order it, let your retailer know, let your friends know, talk about it. Dan Mora did and Alejandro did amazing work on it. It's one of my favorite issues of the series. Please check it out, pick up that issue, and you can start to see some of the seeds for some of the big stories we're doing, and it does continue the stuff we started in the All-In special last year. So
Yeah.
please pre-order it, get out there
Check
and
it
buy
out.
comic books.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, man. Good show.
And you always thanks everybody.